What if the world's richest man owed everything? Not to a CEO, not to a scientist, but to a nanny no one knew about. What if one forgotten woman quietly shaped the future of technology, with nothing but bedtime stories and kindness? And what happens when that billionaire finally remembers her? Would you believe it if I told you it all came full circle? Wait, is that Mrs. Jenkins? Elon Musk slowed his pace, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the gleaming marble floor of the opulent hotel lobby. The chandeliers sparkled above like a constellation, but Elon wasn't looking at the decor. He was locked in on one figure, standing near the concierge desk. His security team was already ahead, guiding the way out, but he stood still, drawn by something deeper than memory, an instinct, a feeling in his gut. There she was, bent slightly at the waist, her delicate, wrinkled hands slowly wiping down the edge of a glass counter. Her movements were careful and deliberate, the way someone moves when every joint aches, but the pride in her posture remained. She wore a light blue housekeeping uniform, buttoned neatly, a small name tag pinned to the side. Her silver hair was pulled into a soft bun, and her face, though older, marked by time, still carried that unmistakable kindness he hadn't seen in decades. His heart skipped. Mrs. Jenkins. He said her name inside his mind like it was a sacred whisper. He hadn't thought about her in years, not because he'd forgotten, but because life had become a blur of innovation, pressure, meetings, launches, and headlines. But now, like a movie reel suddenly replaying in his mind, he was 5 years old again. Mrs. Jenkins was the one who had looked after him in Pretoria, back when his world was filled with awkward silences at home and boundless curiosity about the stars. She was his warmth. She used to sit beside his bed and read him books about the moon and Mars. She'd say, "You'll reach the stars one day, Elon. I can feel it." And every time he had fallen or failed or cried, she'd kneel beside him and say, "You're stronger than this moment." He had believed her, and in some strange, quiet way, her voice still lived in him. And now, standing right in front of him, still working at the age of 85, was the woman who had once carried the weight of his little world with a smile. He moved closer, slowly, not wanting to startle her. The hotel's ambient music echoed faintly in the background, a soft piano melody blending with the hum of conversations and luggage wheels. As he stepped into her peripheral view, she glanced up. Their eyes met. She blinked. Then her breath caught in her throat. Her cloth slipped from her hand. "Elon," she said in a voice that trembled but held the same softness he remembered. He smiled, a genuine one, rare and unguarded. "Mrs. Jenkins," he said gently, "it's really you." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't move. She simply stared, as though seeing a ghost or a miracle. And maybe, in a way, they both were. "Elon, my sweet boy, look at you. Just look at you." He reached for her hand, holding it between both of his. It was cold and thin, but still firm. "I can't believe this," he said, blinking back the sudden emotion threatening to rise in his chest. "What are you doing here?" "Still working." She smiled, a little embarrassed, wiping her eyes with the corner of her sleeve. Life doesn't always turn out the way we planned, dear. But I'm fine. I keep busy. It helps me stay strong." Elon looked around. The luxury, the wealth, the excessive grandeur of the hotel. It all felt hollow in that moment. She, who had once fed him, soothed him, inspired him, was now wiping down counters in silence, unnoticed by the people rushing past her. "You're 85, he asked gently. She nodded with a soft chuckle. "Yes. Time flies, doesn't it?" He shook his head, still processing it all. "And no one helps you?" "No family." She shrugged. "Outlived most of them. Got a niece somewhere in Chicago, but we lost touch. I've always taken care of myself." There was no bitterness in her voice, only strength, the same strength that had carried him through childhood, wrapped in bedtime stories and firm hugs. For a moment, Elon forgot about his meeting, his phone, his schedule. All that mattered was this reunion. "You were the first person who believed in me," he said softly. "You used to tell me I'd reach the stars." Her eyes lit up. "And you did, my boy. You did more than that. I see your name everywhere now. But you shouldn't be working. Not like this. She laughed a little, trying to play it off. I'm just grateful to still be moving. But Elon wasn't smiling anymore. He saw the truth in her eyes, the quiet fatigue, the years of survival, and the burden of being forgotten. And at that moment, he made a silent promise. He wasn't going to walk away and treat this as a coincidence. This wasn't just a touching reunion, it was a wake-up call. She had shown him compassion when he needed it most. Now it was his turn. Elon, she said, squeezing his hand. It's so good to see you. You too, he replied. But this isn't the end of our conversation. I'll be in touch. Very soon. She nodded, and for the first time in years, her smile carried hope. As he walked away, something had shifted in him. The richest man in the world had just been reminded what true wealth really looked like: gratitude, memory, and the people who shape us long before anyone knows our name. For a moment, everything around them seemed to pause. The chatter of the guests, the ringing of phones, the polished shoes gliding across marble floors. It all faded. Time, for Elon Musk and Mrs. Jenkins, had folded into itself. She stood frozen, still holding the cloth in one hand, and Elon gently reached out, taking both her hands into his with warmth that didn't feel performative or forced. It was real. Yes, it's me, he said with a soft smile. Mrs. Jenkins, you haven't changed a bit. Her eyes filled with tears, not from sadness, but from disbelief, like the universe had somehow decided to stitch a forgotten thread back into her life. Oh, my sweet boy, she whispered, her voice trembling. Look at you now, changing the world, just like I always knew you would. For a few long seconds, they just looked at each other. No more words were needed. Then they found a quiet bench in the corner of the lobby, slightly tucked away from the constant movement of the luxury hotel. Elon sat beside her, not as a tech titan or billionaire, but as a man returning to a memory that still lived in his bones. I never thought I'd see you again, she said, dabbing her eyes with a napkin he handed her. Neither did I, he replied, but I'm so glad I did. And then, slowly, she began to tell him her story, one that had unfolded quietly, without headlines or headlines, while the world watched him soar to the skies. After leaving South Africa decades ago, she moved to the U.S. with dreams of a peaceful retirement and a chance to start fresh. But life had different plans. She had no children of her own. Her sister, the only family she'd moved with, passed away years ago. The little savings she had ran out quickly, and her modest pension couldn't keep up with rent, food, and medical bills. So she did what she had always done: worked. Not because she wanted praise, but because she knew no other way. I've been working at hotels for nearly 20 years now, she said, her voice steady but tired. Cleaning, folding sheets, polishing brass handles, doing laundry. Nothing glamorous, but it puts food on the table. Elon listened, each word cutting deeper than the last. His posture straightened, his eyes narrowed, not with judgment, but with disbelief and quiet anger. Not at her, but at the world, the system, the unfairness of it all. You mean to say, he began slowly, you're still working this hard just to live? She smiled, a little embarrassed by his reaction. I've always been a worker, dear. You know that. I don't mind. It keeps me moving. The day I stop, maybe I'll fall apart. But Elon could hardly take it in. Here was the woman who used to hum lullabies to him when he cried at night. The woman who cooked his favorite lentil stew when he didn't feel like eating. The one who told him bedtime stories about astronauts and let him talk for hours about rockets and planets, never once telling him to quiet down. She had given him more than care. She had given him belief. And now, after a lifetime of giving, she was spending her final years wiping counters in silence? That didn't sit right with him. Not one bit. You should be resting, he said firmly. You should have a fireplace and a garden and people who look after you, not spending your days scrubbing glass. She chuckled softly, as though trying to lighten the moment. You always did have a big heart, Elon. But I've managed. I get by. Besides, most people here don't even notice me. I'm just the old cleaning lady. But that's okay. I don't need recognition. But he could hear the sadness hidden between her words. It wasn't about needing fame or thanks. It was about dignity. About not having to choose between paying for medicine or groceries. About not being invisible in a world she once helped nurture. Elon glanced around the hotel. Marble columns, golden finishes, $1,000 a night suites. And yet the woman who had poured love into his childhood was silently scrubbing the edges of this grandeur, unnoticed and underpaid. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Mrs. Jenkins, you'll never have to work again. I promise you that." She looked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said, his eyes serious now. "This ends today. I'm not leaving you here. Not like this." Her lips parted, stunned. "Elon, that's kind, but you don't need to." "I want to," he interrupted gently. "You were there when I had nothing. You gave me your heart, your patience, your time. Now it's my turn." Tears began to fall from her eyes again, this time without resistance. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," he said. "Let me help." She nodded slowly, and in that moment, something in her posture changed. The weight she had been carrying all those years, silently, humbly, lifted just a little. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen. Not as a worker, not as a forgotten name, but as the woman who helped raise a boy who now touched the stars. Elon Musk isn't the kind of man who lets moments slip by without meaning. After hugging Mrs. Jenkins tightly and exchanging contact details, he walked out of the hotel lobby with his security team. But his mind wasn't on the next meeting, or on Tesla, or even on the latest SpaceX launch. He was thinking only of her. That image of her bent over the counter, cleaning with those fragile, aging hands, haunted him. This wasn't just some kind stranger. This was Mrs. Jenkins, the woman who had believed in him when no one else had. The woman who helped shape the core of who he became. She didn't deserve to be overlooked, or to end her life in quiet struggle. That night, Elon couldn't sleep. He sat in his California home, a tablet in one hand and his phone in the other, calling his personal team one by one. Logistics, costs, travel, care. His assistants and staff had endless questions. But Elon was calm and clear. "I don't care how it gets done. I want her living comfortably, surrounded by peace. She gave me more than money ever could. Now it's my turn." And just like that, the wheels turned. In less than a week, Elon made it happen. He didn't just offer a helping hand. He gave her a whole new life. He arranged for Mrs. Jenkins to be flown privately to California. She was greeted at the airport not by cold strangers, but by a small team Elon had personally assigned. Waiting for her was a brand-new, beautiful lakeside home nestled in a quiet, scenic town just outside Los Angeles. The house had wide glass windows overlooking the water, a flower garden in the backyard, and warm wooden interiors designed to feel like home. Not like a rich person's mansion, but a peaceful, personal space. Everything had been prepared for her arrival. Inside, the home was fully furnished, not with sterile, modern luxury, but with comfort. Soft beige couches, warm-toned lighting, bookshelves filled with the kind of old classics she used to read to him as a child, and even a rocking chair near the fireplace, just like the one she once had in South Africa. There was a live-in caretaker to help her daily, a chef to prepare her meals based on her preferences, and a nurse available around the clock, just in case. Elon had thought of everything. But that wasn't all. Elon did something even more personal, something no one else would have thought of. He had his team track down one of the only photos he had from his childhood, a worn black and white image of him, around 5 years old, sitting beside Mrs. Jenkins on a wooden porch in Pretoria. In the picture, she had her arm around him, and little Elon was holding a toy rocket in his lap. He had that photo restored by professionals. The colors were gently brought to life. The image was enlarged and beautifully framed in walnut wood, and it now sat on the table in the center of Mrs. Jenkins' new living room, right next to a fresh bouquet of her favorite white lilies. When she arrived and walked through the front door, she gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes scanned the room, the cozy space, the garden peeking through the glass, and finally, the photograph. She stepped forward, trembling, staring at it. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She turned around, and there was Elon, standing in the doorway, smiling quietly. "Elon," she said in a whisper, "I don't know what to say." He walked over, gently took her hand, and sat her down on the couch. You don't have to say anything, he replied. You once told me I'd reach the stars. You were right, but I couldn't have done it without the love you gave me. Now it's time for you to shine. She held his hand tightly, overwhelmed. You remembered everything, she said. Even that old photo. I never forgot, Elon replied. You're a part of my story, Mrs. Jenkins. A part no one sees, but I do. And then he reached into his jacket pocket and handed her a document, a trust fund, $2 million, set aside just for her. No conditions, no contracts, no expectations. She could live how she wanted, wherever she wanted, for the rest of her life, with dignity, comfort, and peace. Mrs. Jenkins broke down. Decades of holding it all together, of surviving, of pushing through the pain, of telling herself she was fine, suddenly melted away. She leaned into Elon and cried, not just from gratitude, but from relief. Real relief. The kind she hadn't known in years. You always were a little genius, she whispered, laughing through her tears. News of Elon Musk's act of kindness didn't come from a press release or a glossy media campaign. It started with a whisper, a moment captured quietly in the corner of a hotel lobby. A young hotel staffer named Maria had seen it all. She was on her break, sitting with her coffee behind the check-in desk, when she noticed Elon Musk standing still, completely focused on the elderly cleaning lady everyone else barely noticed. She watched the reunion unfold with stunned eyes. How the two spoke, laughed, cried. How they hugged like long-lost family. Without even realizing what she was recording, she had pulled out her phone and filmed a few seconds of the interaction. No sound, just Elon Musk hugging a hotel worker tenderly, respectfully, and walking away after holding her hand. Later that night, Maria uploaded the short video on her TikTok with a simple caption. I think Elon Musk just reunited with his old nanny in our hotel. I cried. Within hours, the internet caught fire. By morning, the video had over 12 million views. And before the hotel's PR team could even react, news outlets from around the world had picked it up. People were curious. Who was this woman? What was the story? It didn't take long before the full picture surfaced. Articles appeared with headlines like, Elon Musk reunites with 85-year-old nanny working at hotel. What he does next will melt your heart. From cleaning rooms to living in luxury, Musk honors the woman who raised him. A billionaire's quiet gratitude. Elon Musk's surprise gift to his childhood caregiver. But for Elon, none of it was about the spotlight. In fact, he hadn't told a single reporter. He hadn't posted any pictures. There was no official announcement. But once the story went viral, people naturally turned to his social media for confirmation. And that's when Elon did something rare. He posted a single tweet, short, sincere, and powerful. Behind every success story is someone kind enough to believe in you before anyone else did. Thank you, Mrs. Jenkins. You're forever part of my journey. The tweet was retweeted over 500,000 times in 24 hours. Celebrities, CEOs, teachers, and everyday people began sharing their own tributes, thanking the mentors, caretakers, and guiding hands that had shaped their lives. It became a global moment. One by one, stories emerged. A nurse posted a photo of her high school science teacher, who once stayed late to help her study. A man shared a video tribute to his grandmother, who raised him after his parents passed. A young artist credited his babysitter for always encouraging his wild sketches. Suddenly, people everywhere were saying thank you to the forgotten heroes in their lives. And at the center of it all was Mrs. Jenkins. Without intending to, she had become a quiet symbol of resilience, humility, and the power of kindness. She wasn't famous. She wasn't rich. She didn't invent anything or stand on stage. But her simple act of love decades ago had helped ignite a fire in a boy who would one day help change the world. Soon, Mrs. Jenkins began receiving letters, emails, and invitations. One of the first came from a National Elderly Care Foundation. They asked her to speak, virtually, at a fundraising gala to help aging caregivers. At first, she declined, shy and uncertain. I've never spoken to an audience before, she said. But with a little encouragement from Elon's team, she agreed. Sitting in her new living room, with sunlight pouring through her windows, and the famous framed photo on the table beside her, Mrs. Jenkins addressed the world via live stream. She spoke not with grand speeches or rehearsed lines, but from the heart. "I didn't do anything special," she said. "I just loved a little boy who was curious and kind, and I'd do it all again." The response was overwhelming. The gala raised triple the expected donations, and messages flooded in from people around the world who were moved by her words. A week later, SpaceX held an internal virtual gathering, and Elon made a surprise appearance. But the real guest of honor wasn't him, it was Mrs. Jenkins. He introduced her warmly to his employees. "This is the woman who first helped launch me. Long before rockets, before engineering, before Silicon Valley. She launched me with love." His words brought smiles and tears across screens. In that moment, everyone watching understood something deeply human, that no achievement stands on its own. We are all carried forward by those who believed in us when we were small, scared, or unseen. Mrs. Jenkins, who once quietly cleaned hallways and read bedtime stories, was now an inspiration for millions. Not because of the money, not because of Elon, but because her story reminded the world of something it often forgets. Kindness lasts. Love echoes. And sometimes, the people who shape us most never ask for anything in return, until one day, the world takes notice. Now, nestled in a peaceful lakeside home filled with sunshine, warmth, and the gentle rustle of trees in the breeze, Mrs. Jenkins lives the life she always deserved. Not one of luxury and flashing lights, but one of peace, dignity, and quiet joy. Her days are slow and meaningful. She wakes to the scent of fresh flowers from her garden, tended lovingly by the staff Elon insisted on hiring for her. Her favorite music, soft piano and jazz, plays gently in the background as she reads books from a shelf filled with classics she once read to a curious little boy in South Africa. She often sits near the window in her rocking chair, sipping tea, watching the ripples of the lake shimmer in the sunlight. Friends and visitors now come often, some old acquaintances, many new ones. Caregivers talk to her like family. Local children sometimes visit with their parents just to meet the woman whose story had inspired so many. And in the center of it all, there's a sense of love. Not the loud kind, but the kind that's been earned, remembered, and finally returned. Mrs. Jenkins no longer worries about how she'll afford groceries. She doesn't fear a cold night or a lonely day. Instead, she lives wrapped in gratitude, not just her own, but the world's. In an interview with a popular human interest journalist, Mrs. Jenkins sat in her cozy living room, the restored photo of her and Elon framed on the table behind her. She wore a simple beige sweater and a string of pearls, a small gift from a neighbor. When asked how she felt about her new life, she smiled softly and said, "All I ever wanted was for my boys to grow up kind to do good in this world. That's all." And Elon, he never forgot. Not many people remember where they came from, but he did. That's what makes me proud, not his money or rockets, but his heart. Those words spread just as quickly as her reunion story. Social media lit up with comments praising the quiet dignity of her sentiment. And Elon, for all the global headlines, the scientific milestones, and technological revolutions he's driven, one thing had changed in him too. On his sleek, minimalist desk in one of Tesla's executive offices, there sits a small, unassuming photo frame. It's not a space rocket, or a blueprint, or an award. Inside the frame is a note, yellowed slightly with time, written in cursive on lined paper, folded and unfolded hundreds of times before it was preserved